Hey mini enthusiasts, how are you doing? I hope you're all well and having a great day. Welcome back. So this is the final episode of the conversion from automatic to manual, and this is where we get stuck into the wiring loom. So as you can see, I've printed off all the relevant circuit diagrams and pin data for the ECU. I've had a good look through it, and I've got an idea of what I need to do. Obviously, I just need to strip apart the loom now and get it done. I'm sure lots of people are going to ask why I've done it a certain way or how I've done it. It's actually pretty simple. So the main part of this exercise really is just taking redundant wiring out the loom. As far as wiring up for the new engine and gearbox, it's pretty simple because everything's still there. The only thing we really need to change is the fuel pump wiring. So on the SPI, the fuel pump is switched on and off by the ECU. So when you turn the ignition on, the pump primes, and then when the ECU sees a crank signal, it will then send an earth to the fuel pump relay to switch the relay on. So what we're actually going to do is still use that fuel pump relay in the multifunction relay unit up on top of the servo. That also does the starter motor and the main relay. There's a relay in there for the oxygen sensor, which will basically take all the wires out and unwire because we won't need that. So there'll be one redundant relay in that multifunction relay. But the main thing we need to do is give an earth to that fuel pump relay because it would normally get that earth switch from the ECU. So obviously there's no ECU there now. So what I've actually done, or what I actually did, is change the switch around on the fuel pump relay. So rather than it being switched on by being given an earth, I've changed it around, given it a permanent earth, and the switch is now the ignition sense wire. So when you turn the ignition on, it will power up the fuel pump. Now, with safety in mind, I have retained all the existing wiring back to the fuel pump itself. So it's on the original wiring, and I've also left in the inertia switch. So in the event of an accident or something going wrong, you've still got the protection of the inertia switch there to switch off the fuel pump. Now, some people have already commented and asked why I just don't go and get a manual loom and put that into the car. Unfortunately, it's not as simple as it sounds like that. This is the previous engine was an automatic, but an injection engine, obviously. So the connection up on the bulkhead is different on injection cars than it was on carburetted cars. So it wouldn't be just as simple as putting an earlier carburetted loom in it, because it would be different on the connection up on the bulkhead. So what I've done is obviously adapted this loom, and the main point really was to make it look OEM. I didn't want a loom that looked like it had been bodged up. I mean, I could have literally just cut all the plugs off and left all of the old wiring in there, but you know me, would have been a bit of a mess, that, and not look very nice. So we're doing it the hard way, stripping apart the loom, taking all the insulation off, tracing all the wires back from the sensors to the relevant plugs. I'm then pinning out the plugs, so taking the pins out the multi-plugs. So what we'll be left with in the end is a greatly reduced amount of wiring under the bonnet, but it will still look nice and standard. Now I'm using loom tape. It's called Tessa tape. It's very, very good when you're doing loom repairs or remaking a loom like this. It's not like PVC tape, which has a disadvantage that it can hold moisture inside the loom. Tessa tape is fabric tape, so it allows the loom to breathe. So if it gets wet, it doesn't stay wet inside the loom. I forgot to mention as well, the only other thing I had to change was the inhibitor switch. Obviously the manual car doesn't have it. Very, very simple that. You just connect the wires together to the switch.
Right, so that's our wiring loom in. It's all quite nice and neat. I've literally unpicked the old loom, taken out any wires that it doesn't need. But you know, I could have just chopped it all out willy-nilly, but I wanted to do a nice neat job, so it looks stock now. It looks like it's meant to be, and of course we're still using the main relay, starter relay, and the fuel pump relay in the relay pack. So that's on nicely. Still waiting for a couple of bits. I have fitted the exhaust on. I've also fitted a facet solid state fuel pump. So up under the back here, I fitted it originally. I turned it on, and because it's mounted to the underneath of the rear seat there, it was just really noisy inside the car. So I've put it on rubber bobbins now just to isolate it a little bit. But that's neat enough. I think Mark was saying on his other car, Rufus, it was mounted on the subframe, but it must have been a bit of a bodge up to get it on the subframe. Exhaust is all back on now. What next?
So we're into the final stages now. It's pretty much almost done. So last sort of jobs here, I'm just setting the valve clearances, the tappets. This engine is a Swift Tune engine. It has 1.5 to 1 roller tip rockers. So we're setting the tappet clearance to 15 thou. And at the same time, the engine's already been run up, gone through a heat cycle. So I'm also going to retorque the head while we're here. Now for setting the tappets, I always use rule of 9 on a Mini. I think it's the described method for setting tappets. And if you ever have to do them like this, you can see very simple way of doing it. I've just got one side of the car jacked up, and then usually put it in sort of 4th gear. And as long as the other wheel is on the ground, you can then turn over the engine using the wheel. It just makes life so simple. Really, really easy to do. And it's quite controllable because you're going through the gearbox, so you can turn it forwards and backwards and get the valve into the exact right position. So as we draw to a close here, I've got to admit I really enjoyed doing this conversion. It was something to sort of tax my brain, get stuck into. Things like the wiring loom, I really didn't know how I was going to do it to begin with, so it wasn't quite make it up as you go along, but as I say, it was something interesting to do. And I'm sure the car does, it drives completely differently. So I think the existing engine would have probably had, I guess, maybe 60, 65 brake horsepower, but going through an automatic transmission. So although it went well, it didn't really do justice to the car itself. Now with that 1380 manual in there, and especially the induction noise of the carburetor as well, it's really going to be fantastic to drive and sound the part too.
pretty much done, but there was one last thing that I forgot to do. Can you guess what it is? Get in the comments down below if you can. Choke. I forgot the choke. So obviously it was an SPI, so no choke required. So I made a bracket for it down the bottom here, so it's kind of discreet. I wasn't brave enough to drill a hole in Mark's dash, so it's on a bracket there. I think we are just about done.
May I suggest you put the car in the auto cruise mode for safety's sake?
So there we go, the engine's looking fantastic. The observant ones will notice that the temperature sender is missing at the moment. Had to order one up because didn't have the right thread to go. Obviously kit has got a custom dash in it and custom gauges, so you have to make sure it's got the right temperature sensor in there. So all done, sounds fantastic, looks absolutely amazing this car. It's got metallic fleck in the paint, it just looks phenomenal in the sun. So what next? We've got a lot of work done on the Cooper S, so the Mark III Cooper S will be the next lot of videos coming up.